Looping your essay means, at the end, referring back to your introduction and somehow wrapping up the debate. You may notice how good writers do this in articles, documentaries, and even stories. Have a look at the opening and closing paragraphs of a news article and you may see this technique in action. There are different ways to do your IELTS essay loop. One way could be to ask a big question in the introduction and close with a clever answer in the conclusion. You could also present a problem at the start and offer a solution at the end. However, it's not that easy to do this well in a short space of time. Journalists and writers may spend days polishing this kind of loop, and you only have 40 minutes for your entire essay. That's why I suggest that for IELTS Task 2 essays, you use the Melbourne English Loop Your Conclusion technique. Remember the contextualization technique from earlier? We looked at placing the concept in its context and identifying the trend over time. In the transport example, we have the trend of the steady growth of car ownership from 1888 to today. So to loop this essay's conclusion, we can simply look at this trend in its context. We highlight where the trend is coming from in the past in the introduction. We predict where it's going in the future in the conclusion. So in summary, with the Melbourne English looping process, the introduction looks at the topic from past to present and the conclusion looks at it from present to future. Let's see how we can apply this strategy to the transport example in the next video. As I mentioned, the transport topic is already highlighting the trend with car ownership over time. But be aware that not every question will do that. We will cover what to do in this situation in part 3 of the course. But let's get back to this transport example for now. When writing this introduction, I will think about the trend, the context, and how I will loop back the conclusion later. So, car usage growth is a worrying trend. I agree with that. And the essay is really about the usefulness of two solutions, alternative transport and international laws. This essay is about my opinion, so I'll need to highlight that in the introduction. I will use synonyms and academic language and avoid using their words. So my introduction can go something like this. It is true that the proliferation of automobiles has led to serious logistical and environmental issues for UK society as traffic problems and carbon monoxide production become major problems that have grown exponentially over the last century. This sentence places the car transport topic in its timeline context, the last 130 years, and it comments on car ownership growth and its problems. Note that it uses the present perfect tense with the verbs has led to and have grown. Let's finish the introduction by being sure to introduce the essay debate content and include our opinion. The concept of cross-border legislation and the promotion of different transport means have been cited as solutions to these problems that, in my opinion, have some potential. So this final sentence of the introduction places the concept in its timeline context, discussing methods of fixing the problem that have been tried thus far. It also opens the debate without closing it off, which is a good strategy, and gives my opinion, which is partial agreement. Remember here that in an opinion essay, it is possible to completely agree, completely disagree, or to partially agree. Most of the time it's best to partially agree because most IELTS essay topics are a grey area. They're not black and white, so if you explore both sides of the argument, it gives you more content and points for your body paragraphs. Okay, so in our transport example, we know our body paragraphs, which we wrote earlier, cover the pros and cons of cycling and public transport. That leaves us with the job of looping our conclusion back to this introduction that we just wrote. Remember, we want to refer to the transport topic from past to present in the introduction and from present to future in the conclusion. Let's write the conclusion now. Remember, in the conclusion, we want to make reference to the question loop back to the introduction, disagree with the law's solution, and look forward by predicting the future trend with the transport topic. With all that in mind, the conclusion can go something like this. While the number of cars on the roads causes significant environmental and logistical problems for society, the solution of international legal measures is limited for practical reasons. Put simply, transport infrastructure investment choices are national decisions. However, in my opinion, the promotion of public transport and cycling have great potential and should be adopted by both the government and public alike. Let's look at the signposts in blue for a moment. Notice the linking word while is a useful concession signpost, as is however. This is not a one-sided essay. This is not in complete agreement or complete disagreement with the question. Therefore, it needs these concession signposts or linking words. So, to conclude this section of the course, let's look at what this transport conclusion does. This conclusion closes off the arguments opened up in the introduction. It refers to the timeline context of the transport debate, now going from the present to the future, pointing to the future with the conditional tense in the words should be adopted. Effectively, it closes off the argument and loops back to the introduction. And that completes our 9-band essay on transport. Well done for making it this far. The last video in this section revises the lessons that we have learnt so far.